with the College Tailgaters. Another episode of College Tailgaters coming your way. My name is Chris America. A little under the weather today, Sean. I should probably introduce you. Here's my co-host, Sean Daly, coming to you from Illinois. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing okay. Sad to hear you're under the weather. But yeah, it's nice here in Illinois. Like I said, I'm Sean Daly. You can find me on Twitter at TailgatersSean. You can find the podcast at TailgatersPod on iTunes, Podbean, 12ouncesports.com, and 12 Ounce Sports on the Tuna app. What's going on with you, Chris?
Like I said, I've been under the weather since probably the beginning of this week. Got a nice little head cold going, but maybe it'll help with my radio voice, get it nice and deep.
Yeah, it's probably a side effect of this marathon. Only bad things can happen from exercise.
Yeah, only bad things can happen from exercise. We are also joined, also from Florida, our man who won the Bowl Mania Challenge, the College Tailgaters Bowl Mania Challenge. Tuna, how you doing, buddy?
Doing good, guys. How y'all doing?
We're good. I was talking to our boy Clayton. You're an insider at Podcast BSR, correct? The Basement Sports Report?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Gambling insider. I'm guilty, man. Podcast BSR. Check those guys out. You can find them at Podcast BSR on Twitter, and you can find me at Tunes352 on Twitter.
So you're the gambling insider. That's probably why you had the winner's edge in our Bowl Mania pick'em. I didn't know he was bringing in a hustler into this game. I didn't know Clayton was bringing in his side hustle guy.
Yeah, he hit me up and he said, "Hey, man, if you want to show some love, go ahead and enter." I said, "Oh, yeah, I want to enter."
Now, when you were making your picks, were you looking at spreads? How were you making your determination of picks if you're the gambling insider?
Well, so I did maybe, I think, 3 or 4 pick'ems, and I was looking at the record, I was looking at the rankings. Some of the teams, I was checking out their schedule. It just kind of depended. I spent a couple days on it and, kind of filled out one and then used that first one to kind of fill in the rest of mine. So kind of a lot of things I looked at. The one that we did was straight up and no the confidence points. So that one, honestly, it was a little bit easier than the other ones I did because they were with the confidence points, and that's tough, man. It's a lot of luck involved.
Yeah, especially when you're talking about Boca Raton Bowls and, I don't know, the San Diego Credit Union Teachers Credit Union Bowl, all those weird bowl names and schools you've never really heard of, couldn't even point them out on a map. So it was pretty good. Those are the bowl games that got me and Sean early. The first games before Christmas really hurt us. We fell back pretty bad, and we tried to make a good run at it. I was glad to pick up the Navy win and the UCF win, but fell apart at the end with Georgia and Alabama because I was picking Oklahoma Clemson on that one. What were some of the picks that you regretted making?
Well, you mentioned one, the UCF Auburn game, man. I was so on the fence, and I really, really wanted to pick UCF. I really did. It was just tough, man. Auburn beat Georgia and Alabama. I really thought there was no way that UCF was going to be able to pull it out. And I'll tell you what, man, they surprised me. That defense played good. Probably played their best game of the year, and the offense, man, we all know how deadly they were, so they just kind of did their thing.
Yeah, was there a pick that you made that you saw everybody else didn't make, and you were just kind of laughing that you had the inside knowledge on? Because that was my game. Like when I picked UCF to beat Auburn, that's the one where I was laughing at, knowing that I was going to get that one right.
Yeah, I mean, I would say one of the ones that I got right that nobody else probably saw coming was TCU beating Stanford. A lot of people thought Stanford was going to win that pretty easily.
Man, that was a frustrating one too because Stanford was up big, and I went to bed thinking, all right, got another one in the bag. Woke up the next day.
Same. I went to bed and was like, man, this sucks. I think at that time I was tied with Clayton. And I won and Clayton lost, and I was just like, yes, like it was such a good thing to wake up to. It was awesome.
I mean, honestly, when you play those kind of things, especially with a group of people you don't know, you're really just trying to beat your best friend.
Absolutely. And me and him were like number 1 and 2 for a lot of the time. So it was fun, man. I'm glad I'm glad I got in there. I'm glad I was able to meet you guys. It was a fun time.
Well, yeah,
It's pretty cool.
We were glad to put together. It was a really good group of people with the picks and everything. We were talking about that last week, and we're glad that you were able to come on the show and brag a little bit. You could talk about how you're better than Clayton and all of us, man. Congratulations.
Well, I mean, one thing I did do, and you kind of mentioned earlier that you knew the SEC wasn't gonna do too well, and I'm an SEC guy at heart. I'm a Gators fan from way back, so I struggled because I picked a lot of SEC teams and lost, but I had confidence in Georgia and Alabama. Man, Alabama, and it's frustrating because I didn't necessarily think that Alabama should have been there. And they got an entire extra week to prepare. That all three of those other teams played in a conference championship game, and Alabama didn't.
That's true.
And if you give Nick Saban an extra week to prepare, he's going to win.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't care who he's playing.
And it's funny too because this is what kind of defines Alabama's dynasty and their dominance. I was on the phone with my buddy who's a Alabama fan when they won the game, and I told him this, and he agreed with me. I said, this is probably one of the worst Alabama teams Nick Saban has had, and you guys still won a national championship.
Absolutely.
So it's going to be scary what he can do when he finally has a good team again. But if you looked at his 10 seasons or 11 seasons, I would definitely say this is probably one of his worst, and it's still a really good team, and it's frustrating to see if you're not an Alabama fan.
I'm going to tell you, man, it is frustrating. It's frustrating to see Alabama do what they're doing, and being a Gators fan, man, it's frustrating to see Georgia. They've got one of the best teams in the nation, and they've got one of the best recruiting classes for the next 2 years. So it's going to be hard over there in the East for Florida for a while.
Well, it'll be difficult, but we definitely have a bright future ahead, I think, and we just landed another big-time wide receiver. I think we're going to have to change our name from DBU to Wide Receiver U after we picked up wide receiver Justin Watkins, a 4-star recruit out of Citra, Florida, which is kind of just south of Gainesville. I'm pretty pumped to see what this offense could possibly do this first season, man. I don't know how you feel about it.
Man, I hope that Emory Jones is going to be ready to rock. I mean, he's already there. He's already getting reps. It could be dangerous, man. Dan Mullen and his Jordans, he's walking those Jordans all over people right now in the recruiting game. He hit the ground running, man. So,
I'm not predicting national title or SEC title or even an Eastern Division title, but I definitely will guarantee we will be in the top 50 in offense. We won't be in the bottom 100 anymore. That's for sure.
Absolutely. And you mentioned DBU. Hopefully, we've got another recruit that we're working on, Noah Boykin.
Okay.
He's a DB, and man, he's a 4-star DB. And if we could get him to commit, he took a visit, I think, this past weekend, or he might, still be on that visit. So he's actually on the visit with Justin Watkins.
Oh, so, nice. So hopefully him seeing Justin Watkins go over will persuade him in. It's basketball season now, and our Gators got a huge win last night. Big 2-point win against Kentucky at Kentucky. It ends, believe it or not, a 57-game home win streak Kentucky had at home against non-ranked opponents. Florida's fallen on some hard times. We fell from number 5 when we were barely losing to Duke all the way out of the top 25. But we've been climbing our way back up, man. I don't know if you've been following this basketball team, but it started getting depressing, and people are saying get rid of Mike White, but they've bounced back, and that win against Kentucky was huge.
Well, and that's the nature of a Florida fan, man. We're spoiled, and as soon as things start going wrong, we are wanting somebody's head. We're wanting somebody fired, and a lot of times it can be a little premature. That game last night was electric. It was a great game, man. It was just, and the ending was awesome. You're right. It was a huge win, man. A huge win for us. So hopefully we can take some of that momentum and keep rolling with it. That would be awesome.
Well, you mentioned that we were spoiled. I've noticed that Kentucky fans are spoiled. I don't know, Sean, did you see this on Twitter at all? I know I tweeted out a little bit about it. A lot of Kentucky fans are now asking for Calipari to be fired. Sean, Tell these Kentucky fans they're crazy.
It's absolute insanity to ask for Coach Cal to be fired. Like you said, they had this 57-game win streak against unranked opponents. They had a 30-game win streak that was snapped. That was home wins against SEC opponents. The level of success he's had as far as national championships, SEC titles, it's unmatched. Like, who out there is better? Who are you going to get that's better than Coach Cal?
Right.
You need to pump the brakes a little bit. These things happen when you have a team full of freshmen. You're not going to be the most consistent team in the world. So I'd say relax, take a deep breath. You guys are going to be just fine.
Yeah, I think this is the poison that you picked with Coach Cal. You knew what you were getting. You knew you were going to get a guy who is going to bring in a ton of NBA first-round talent, but year in and year out, you're not going to be that dominant team. You're not going to be that consistent team. You're going to have to take the years where you have the John Walls and the Cousins that can lead you deep into a tournament run, and then other years you're going to have a year like this year where maybe they're not as good as those guys, but they're still NBA talent. They're good enough to win you a lot of games. You just got to take the good with the bad. And right now you're just on the bad. And I don't know how you feel about this, Tuna, but this is the best rivalry in SEC basketball is Kentucky versus Florida. So when you lose a 2-point game to a team like Florida, you can't be mad about it.
No, absolutely not, man. And you're right. It's a great rivalry. My uncle is a Bull Gator booster, and he has home floor seats to the basketball game. So we go to quite a few, and there's nothing like going to a Kentucky game, man. It's crazy. It's an electric factory. It's great. And if we would have lost that game, and there's a lot less for us to risk. We're not ranked. Of course, we're trying to climb back up. So they had a lot more to lose there. But I wouldn't have been mad, man. We fought hard in that game. It was a great game, win or lose,
It was a typical Kentucky-Florida game that we've seen since basically Billy Donovan got here and made Florida into a basketball school for the most part. And these are the two teams that out of the SEC that are consistently good and consistently making deep runs. Yeah, sometimes Tennessee's good. Yeah, sometimes Vanderbilt puts together a respectable squad. Missouri's kind of hit or miss, but overall, Florida and Kentucky are the breadwinners of the SEC conference right now. They're basically the Alabama and Georgia at this time in football. So for you to be mad that you lost by 2 points at home to a solid Florida team, like we said, was ranked as high as 5 earlier in the season, I don't know how you can call for Coach Cal to be fired.
Absolutely. I feel the same way. And speaking about SEC football or basketball, what about Auburn, man? I don't know if you guys are following them at all, but they're ranked for the first time in like 20 years, man. They went on like a 15-game winning streak.
Well, that's what happens when you start getting that Adidas money, isn't it?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
No, it's great to see Auburn doing well, and I don't want to see any of the programs get gigged for the money. So hopefully the FBI doesn't turn anything out on Auburn and that doesn't ruin that season. But yeah, it's good to see Auburn doing well. You said they were on a 15-game winning streak?
Well, and I think that they did end up losing recently. I'm not sure. I don't follow them too close. But yeah, I think at some point they were on a 15-game win streak, man. They were killing it.
Yeah, and another surprise team is over in Sean's neck of the woods in the Big Ten is Ohio State. Who saw that coming? Sean, did you see this kind of success?
No, I did not. They were outside the rankings to start the year. Everyone was talking about in the Big Ten how it was Michigan State and then the rest of the Big Ten. And so Ohio State's been a big surprise. Purdue's been a big surprise to be. It's looking like a possible championship contender. And Auburn did lose recently, by the way. That was to Alabama. They lost, and they got that stud freshman point guard over there. But yeah, Ohio State. They're getting great play out of Bates Diop, and he's kind of what makes it all happen for them. And yeah, I think they're going to be a dangerous team, especially in the Big Ten tournament. They should easily make the field of 68 this year. The Big Ten was supposed to have a down year, but it looks like there's a handful of competitive teams this year.
Yeah, Ohio State, man, this summer was weird because you had Thad Matta from Ohio State fired. You had Bob Stoops step down in the middle of the summer as well. And then you had Hugh Freeze fired from Ole Miss. And surprisingly, other than Ole Miss, I mean, Ole Miss did better than I expected them to do. They were 6-6, I think, or 6-7, something around there. But Ohio State and Oklahoma didn't skip any beats by their coaches leaving uh, unexpectedly in the middle of the summer. So kudos to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ohio State, they should continue to win. They still have a couple games with Illinois left, so that's 2 easy wins. But yeah, they step right in, and they're playing over their head a little bit right now, so hats off.
All right, one more topic that I wanted to talk to you about, Tuna. I know you got pretty excited when I mentioned this, and then we'll let you go. The coaching carousel continues, and Lane Kiffin hires Charlie Weiss Jr. going to FAU. Excuse me. What did you think about that hire?
Man, I love what's going on down there. And, I'm a natural I don't know. I kind of always try to go against the grain, and that's one of the reasons why I have like an emotional connection to Lane Kiffin. Man, he is just. I love the way that he talks crap. I love how he can relate to the kids. I mean, for him to do what he did down there, I don't care what anybody says about strength of schedule, about any of that stuff. It's amazing. It's awesome, and he's getting good talent down there. That's a good grab for him to get. That's going to get him some recruits more than he's already getting. I don't expect them to start winning big bowl games or anything like that. And I also don't expect him to be there for even half of his 10-year contract. If he does what he did again for a couple years, somebody will give him another shot. And I think he deserves it. I think he deserves another shot.
Yeah. Is this Charlie Weiss Jr., is he the same kid that came with his dad to Florida when he was the offensive coordinator for 1 year in the first year under Will Muschamp?
Yep.
So it is the same kid?
Yes.
Okay. And that was like a weird thing that happened at Florida because Charlie Weiss was here. We were all excited about it, and then he takes the Kansas job and takes off, and his kid goes with him. So it was kind of interesting to see this kid's name pop back up, and that's a good landing spot for this kid if he wants to learn how to become an offensive coordinator and grow under that. Lane Kiffin's definitely that guy to teach you the ins and outs of being an offensive coach in college football. Sean, what did you think of the hire?
No, yeah.
Well, kid there is the operative word. Charlie Weiss Jr. is 24 years old, so he's going to be an OC at 24 years old. He is, I guess, considered like a rising star in the coaching field. So this is, like you said, a good first OC gig for him. Good guy to learn under. And you said you expect Lane Kiffin Tuna to be gone within the 5 years. I expect Charlie Weiss Jr. to be gone even faster than that.
Yeah, I mean, if they both do well, they could both leave at the same time. Yeah. What were you going to say, Tuna?
It's going to be really cool to watch him learn under Lane Kiffin. And I think, Kiffin did that on purpose. Like, he went and got the youngest guy he could get on purpose. And because he was the youngest guy and really, honestly, is still one of the youngest guys now. So, I mean, he got some chances early at a young age. And, I think he's just trying to kind of return that, that favor that he got when he was young. So I think it's great, man. I think it's cool. I think it's kind of crazy. And it's like these NFL players, like, for instance, Jameis Winston. I'm a Bucs fan. I don't really like Jameis or anything like that, but the dude's 23 years old. I'm 27. So, like, these guys are 3-4 years younger than me, and they're, playing NFL football, or, Charlie Weiss Jr. is an offensive coordinator at a D1 school. It's crazy to see, man. Make me feel like, dang, man, what the heck are you doing?
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, what were we all doing at 24? It wasn't being an offensive coordinator at any school, like for a Pop Warner team, let alone a Division I school. And I think this is kind of the trend that's happening in college football and the NFL. Is there's a huge youth movement in the coaching world. You saw the Rams go young, you saw the Niners go young. You saw Bob Stoops steps down and they go straight to this kid who's basically 34, 35, I think. Lincoln is. I mean, look at Dan Mullen. We just hired Dan Mullen. He's been a coach for 9 years, and the dude's only 45. So could possibly have Dan Mullen for 20 to 25 years, which is insane to think about, that we still have the best of Dan Mullen left ahead of us, rather than when, what was it, when Bill Belichick went to the Patriots, or when Nick Saban went to Alabama, they were in their 50s to 60s. Both of their careers are now winding down. It's hard to believe that Nick Saban could be gone and retired in 5 years.
Yeah, definite youth movement. I think it's necessary. It's easier to relate to your players when you're not 30 to 40 years older than them. So I think, changing of the guard. The old heads are kind of on the way out, and it's all about the new, trendy, sexy offensive guys.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
And
go ahead.
Well, just like he said, relating to the players is huge right now, and there's such a gap there with a lot of those old coaches, and they can't control the locker room. They are losing recruits. I mean, and there was not a huge age gap or anything, but Will Muschamp, he couldn't relate to the players. He was too old school in his ways, and it caused him to lose the locker room. And that's a huge thing, man. Like, that's a huge thing. You got to have those guys on your team. You got to have them, in your corner fighting for you. And that's something that it's huge for those young guys to be able to do that.
Yeah, very true, man. All right, well, we'll let you go. Thanks for coming on the show. Congratulations again. We're looking forward to having you for March Madness. We'll get a thing going, and maybe Sean and I can get our heads together and come up with some sort of like trophy, or maybe like a turnover chain or something. I don't know. We'll come up with some sort of prize to give out to everybody who wins these things. But congratulations again. Where can we find you again?
What was that?
Where can we find you again on Twitter?
You can find me at Tunes352 on Twitter, and check out Podcast BSR on Twitter as well. I appreciate it, guys. I had fun. Glad I got to meet you guys. Anytime you want me on, just let me know. I'm always game.
All right, cool, man. We appreciate that. And before you go, since you're the gambling guy, what are your picks today? Are you going with the -8.5 for the Pats, or are you putting your money down on the +8.5 for the Jaguars?
No, give me the points. I want the Jaguars. I think the Jaguars, their defense is too good, and Pats aren't going to be able to score like they have been on everybody else. It's going to be a great game, man. I'm going Pats. I'm going Jaguars +8, and then I'm not sure what the spread is on the other game, but I'm taking the Vikings. I'm going to tell you that right now.
Vikings straight up.
That defense is too good.
Yeah, I agree.
Vikings straight up.
All right, cool, man. Well, thanks again for coming on the show. We'll look forward to having you on again. Maybe we can get some more gambling inside information around the March Madness and stuff, and see what you think of those spreads.
All right, boys.
All right, man. Have a good
weekend.
Let me know. Yep.
You too.
All right, later.
Take care.
See ya.
All right, Sean. Let's move on to your Illini. We talked about Jalen Hurts transferring to your team, and you were talking about a top 5 possibility, but you spotted another possible quarterback transfer. Who are we looking at now?
Right, so that Jalen Hurts transfer, for me, that was kind of like a LeVar Ball type situation. I was trying to speak that into existence.
Yeah.
But they do now have a realistic option. The Illini just hired offensive coordinator and quarterback coach Rod Smith from Arizona. Rod Smith has a great history of working with dual threat quarterbacks. He coached Pat White out at West Virginia. He coached Denard Robinson at Michigan, and obviously Khalil Tate over in Arizona. So this year, Khalil Tate was not the opening day starter. The opening day starter was Brandon Dawkins, and he got injured, and that led to Tate taking over. And Dawkins has completed his degree and is now eligible to move on as a graduate transfer, which seems like it would make a lot of sense to follow his OC. So he'll be going to a system he knows, coming to Illinois where he'd be guaranteed to play, because Illinois at this point is returning one quarterback. They have a sophomore returning, and then they have 2 incoming freshmen. So they have no upperclassmen in the quarterback position. So if they could bring in a grad transfer, solid dual threat quarterback, I think they'll be at least, watchable football next year.
And this is a move by Lovie Smith that I actually really like. We mentioned this on Scout Team Sports about people saying, let's get rid of Tomlin, and Mike Mularkey getting fired, and everybody, complaining about how the Tennessee's offense wasn't good, so let's just get rid of Mike Mularkey and hire an offensive guy. It frustrates me when you try to fire a coach and hire a coordinator to be your next head coach, when really you should just keep the really good head coach and just hire a new offensive coordinator. I like this move by Illinois to pick up the offensive coordinator, even if you don't get this quarterback from Arizona. This guy's always been good. Like you said, he coached up Pat White. I remember that West Virginia offense being electric, and maybe he's the wheel that makes it turn for Rich Rodriguez, because everywhere this guy goes with Rich Rodriguez, you see offensive success, where Rich Rodriguez, I don't know, he just never made it big after West Virginia. So hopefully this turns out to be good things for you at Illinois. And my boy Lovie Smith. I'm a huge Lovie Smith fan. I know you're not as high on him, but I hope it turns it around for you guys and you make a run at that Western Division Big Ten title.
I certainly hope so. And Lovey, he's kind of an interesting coach. He's like a hybrid between, the guys who can relate to the players and the old school guys. He still definitely has an old school mentality, but I think the players respect his NFL career, his tenure as a coach there, and he knows what it takes to get in the league. So he's kind of in between. We'll see with Lovey. I'm definitely giving him at least another year or two, but I think this is a good hire. And yeah, like you said, even if they don't get Brandon Dawkins, I'm excited to see Rod Smith work with Cam Thomas a little bit. So it can't get any worse.
All right, so that was a little bit of good news for you. I got a little bit of bad news for you. You ready for it? I know you're not a big fan of Duke. You're not a big Blue Devil supporter. And they picked up this big-time recruit. What is the name? Zion
Williamson, yes.
And so Zion Williamson
he's the number
pulls
2
the trigger
recruit
on Duke. Yep. Go ahead.
Yeah, number 2 recruit. He's probably, due to like social media and YouTube and all that, he's probably the most famous high school player since LeBron. Everyone's seen all this stuff on YouTube, dunking over people, dunking from the free throw line. If you haven't seen it, just go ahead and type his name into the YouTube real quick. But yeah, he made his announcement last night. He has a press conference on TV, of course. ESPN was hyping it up all day. He's from South Carolina. His choices were Clemson, South Carolina, Duke, Kansas, Kentucky, North Carolina. And yeah, he chose Duke, which was upsetting to me. I was really hoping he'd go outside those choices and he'd pick the Big Baller League over in Lithuania. I thought that would have been awesome.
That would have been fun.
But so yeah, he's the number 2 recruit. He joins fellow Duke recruits RJ Barrett, who's the number 1, Cameron Reddish, who's the number 3, and Trey Jones, who's number 8 or 10, depending on what site you look at. So that gives Duke 4 out of the top 8 or 4 out of the top 10 recruits in the country next year. Right when you thought they were, Marvin Bagley's going into the NBA, Grayson Allen's going to be gone, and Duke just totally reloads.
Yeah, it seems like Coach K's changed up his recruiting strategy over the last few years. He used to be known more for getting the solid recruits that he knew he was going to have for 2 or 3 seasons that he can develop and put together these well-experienced teams. And now he's kind of taken that Calipari approach of getting a lot of these one-and-done type players. Like you mentioned, like having the Bagleys, and now we got this Zion Williams who probably be gone in a year. So I'm wondering if he saw what Calipari was doing and thought, if I'm going to keep up, I need to join this one-and-done arms race.
Yeah, you definitely need to recruit these one-and-done guys to be competitive, but you also need a good mix. Calipari's most successful teams had a couple seniors. He had that point guard, Tyler Eulis, fellow Marian Catholic High School alum. Shout out to the Spartans. And, Duke's got Grayson Allen as an upperclassman, so you need a good balance, these one-and-dones and a few upperclassman leaders who can kind of control it when things get a little chaotic.
Yeah, and that was kind of what Billy Donovan was doing before he left for Oklahoma City, trying to get that nice balance of the one-and-dones like the Bradley Beals and some other players like Chioza that we have now kind of deal. Let's go over some of the scores. Wichita State lost yesterday. Good, solid American
back-to-back
team.
conference games.
Yeah. This is going to be an interesting – I think it's going to be a good March Madness where making those picks is going to be tough because nobody's really solidified themselves this year as the dominant team, as the team that you look at and say, this is the team to beat. Every time you think Duke is going to be that team, they kind of fall to somebody. And Duke has multiple times this season. Earlier this week, they were down big to Miami and they had to claw their way back up. I know they were that way against Florida earlier in the year. This kind of seems to be their MO. What is your feeling on the season? Is there any team that you're looking at and saying this is the team to beat when March rolls around?
There's a couple I like. I mean, Villanova. There's obviously a lot to like there. They're ranked number one. They have been for a lot of the year. I really like Purdue's balance. They got 3 or 4 guys who can lead them in scoring any given night. They got a lot of size. Isaac Haas is like a 7'2" center. That can give some teams some trouble. I don't really buy Virginia at the top. I don't think their style of basketball, they play great defense, but it's generally the offensive teams that make it. And you still can't count out Michigan State. They're down at 9 right now. I expect them to be top 5 by the end of the year. I wouldn't be surprised if the Big Ten has 2 number 1 seeds in the tournament with Purdue and Michigan State.
Yeah, and I actually like West Virginia as well. They've been playing some really solid basketball. They're really tough to beat at home. This is going to be a really fun March Madness, I think, this year because it's wide open. If the 4-1 seeds make it to the Final Four, I'll be shocked. I won't be surprised if it's a 2 seed and maybe a 6 seed and a 4 seed and maybe like a surprise 8 or 9 seed in there in the Final Four. I won't be surprised at all. That's how wide open I think this college basketball season's shaken out.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely can happen. You got crazy talented teams like Arizona down at 14 right now. There's a lot of talent spread out throughout the country, and we just saw it. Like teams like Oklahoma can lose to anybody. They just lost to Oklahoma State despite Trae Young dropping 48 points in that game. So
yeah,
anybody can beat anybody. It seems like this year.
Trae Young's been a guy I've been looking at as an Orlando Magic fan. We're basically the Cleveland Browns of the NBA. So around this time of year, I start looking for that lottery pick that I'm going to get, and Trae Young has me really excited about possibly being a superstar the Orlando Magic need. And he looked really good yesterday, but like you said, in a losing effort.
Yeah, Trae Young to me is he's very similar to Steph Curry. He's kind of undersized. He doesn't have the elite athleticism, but man, all he does is score, and he actually scores much more efficiently than Steph did when he was in college against better competition, and his assist numbers are off the chart. I mean, the way he understands how an offense works now and the way he plays a pick and roll, it's crazy. And I think that any team that overlooks Trae Young early in this lottery just because he is small and not that athletic, I think they're going to regret it for years and years.
Yeah, definitely for sure. And it's going to be I've heard lots of people say this is going to be a very solid draft class. We talked about Bagley a little bit. You got Trae Young. I'm definitely going to keep my eyes open because, like I said, as an Orlando Magic fan and you're a Bulls fan, are you guys looking for lottery picks or are you still hanging around the middle of the road for playoffs?
Well, the tank was going great for the Bulls. So they were 3-18. And then Niko Mirotic came back after getting his face broken. He got punched in the face by Bobby Portis in a practice. And ever since he came back, they've been on a freaking tear. They win every game now. It's unbelievable. So they're I think right now the Bulls would have the 10th most ping pong balls in the lottery, which is killing me. I was hoping for them to pick top 3 this year.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see the NBA draft coming up, but we're still a ways away from that. Let's bounce into our weekly series that we started of judging and laughing at the AP Top 25 and how much of a joke preseason polls are. Let's start off with number 20, Kansas State. Preseason ranking, and I think that was a fair assessment for them. I'm trying to look up to see what their final record was. I think they were around that 500 mark, right?
8-5.
8-5, okay. And did they finish outside of the top 25, it looks like?
Yes, so they had 8-5. They were 5-4 in conference play. They had a couple bad losses. They lost to Vanderbilt, which is never good, and they got blown out by TCU. Other than that, they played some tough games. They did a double overtime loss to Texas. They did beat Oklahoma State on the road. They beat West Virginia, and they won their bowl game, the Cactus Bowl, over UCLA.
Yeah, and we gave really high praise to Schneider as their coach and Kansas State, but I feel like 8-5. You could have maybe. No, I guess you don't rank an 8-5 team in the top 25, but 20 is a fair assessment for them. Like you said, had a couple of plays gone their way against West Virginia or against Texas. They might be 9-5, 9-4, as opposed to 8-5. Finished off the season strong against the hapless UCLA Bruins without a coach, without a starting quarterback, but 35-17 was an impressive win, especially the way they won that game too. It was they went down big and then just took over the game and ran out the score. I'll give it, if we're talking baseball terms, I'll give the fact that they tried to get a bunt single and they just barely lost to the throw. The throw got to the bag just before they stepped on it for the AP.
For me, I don't know. They do have reason to be optimistic looking forward. Snyder is back again. Like you said, Big 12 could be more winnable with both Mason Rudolph and Baker Mayfield leaving. But for hit or miss, I don't know, 5-4 in the Big 12, 8-5. To me, this is Alfonso Soriano swinging at a two-strike slider. This is a big miss.
Okay, I like that. Number 19 was right on if you look at how they finished, but I thought they were unfairly valued. That's USF came in at 19, and I thought they were a better team than number 19 going into the season, and I thought they finished the season better than 19, but they finished the season at 21. So they kind of stayed right exactly where the AP said they would. They finished the season 10-2. Big loss, close loss to co-national champions UCF, and they had a really tough win or a really great win against Texas Tech to finish out the season. I know I'm really high on USF in the American Athletic Conference, and I'm a big homer there. So I'll give it to you, the Big Ten guy who's not as invested in the state of Florida and the American Conference. What do you think?
I think USF had a great season. So 10-2, 6-2 in their conference. You talked about their bowl win over Texas Tech. They also had a home win over Illinois.
That
was
a
the first game of a
win.
home and home, so they have to come to Champaign next year. But what really doomed them this year as far as the rankings goes, their loss to Houston. That loss against UCF was against a highly ranked UCF game. It was in Orlando in one of the best games of the year. UCF was a great team, though, led in all facets by senior quarterback Quentin Flowers. But they also had a really good defense. Flowers is leaving, so looking forwards, they got to rely on Charlie Strong being a good recruiter and a good coach to keep them up there. Finished the year ranked 21, like you said. So for me, ranking them at 19 in the preseason, this is Chumbawamba's tub thumping. This is a major hit. They nailed this one.
Chumbawamba's tub. Oh, man, that's great. I like that. Moving on up, we're going to stay in the state of Florida, is the Miami Hurricanes. Finished off, or they were ranked 18 in the AP, and they finished off at number 13 with a 10-3 record. This one is hard to judge whether or not they got it right or wrong. I'm going to say they got it wrong, though. To rank a team like Miami, who went on this amazing run at the beginning of the season, finishing off the run with a big win against top-ranked Notre Dame, only to fall flat on their face the last 3 games. But you can't hate on 2 of those losses. You can definitely hate on them for losing to Pittsburgh, but it was at Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is known as a giant slayer, and then losing to Clemson and Wisconsin, I can't hate on that. They finished the season at 13. I feel like that would have been a more appropriate preseason ranking for them, but Miami was an unknown going into the season, so maybe it was a fair. I'll give this since you went Chumbawamba, I'll give this a Baja Man Who Let the Dogs Out type hit. It's
okay.
catchy. It's catchy. It gets you going, but it didn't last that long. It wasn't that great.
Okay. I like it. Yeah, like you said, 10-3 for Miami, total collapse. They got as high as number 2, I believe, this year, before the wheels totally fell off. And we were asking all year, was that number 2 ranking for real? Was Miami frauds? They were a year ahead of schedule, and they came crashing back down there those last 3 games. Junior quarterback Malik Rozier, definitely dynamic, but sometimes turnover prone. They'll have him back. They should be ranked top 10 next year. For me, this one was really hard to judge because Miami was a year ahead of schedule. They got really high ranking, but they plummeted back. So to me, this was a Sister Hazel song. It's not necessarily a hit, but you're not changing the radio station.
That's awesome. Next one, it pains me to say, I honestly didn't understand it when I saw it myself. Number 17 was the Florida Gators. They finished the season 4-7, complete embarrassment. Coach starts making up threats, had to fire him after an embarrassing beatdown by the Georgia Poodles in Jacksonville. It was painful to watch. I'm hoping that I never have to live to see that again. This was, I don't know, this is like big baller brand shoe miss for me.
Yeah, so 4-7, 3-5 in conference. They did beat a ranked Tennessee team at the time. I don't know how. We'll get to Tennessee later, but they were 23 when Florida beat them. And a win at Kentucky. That's not a bad win either with how Kentucky played this season. But you talked about the blowout, Georgia, the blowout to Mizzou. They lost to a depleted Florida State team. We've covered at length that Florida has a lot to look forward to in the upcoming seasons. But as far as hit or miss, this is a miss on the scale of like the amount I celebrated when the Bears traded their entire future for Jay Cutler. I celebrated like there was no tomorrow. This is as big of a miss as my celebration of Jay Cutler.
Yeah. Oh man, it was just bad. Florida, just like Tennessee, got in on name alone. I think there was no reason to believe that Florida could be a top 25 team yet. I had some hopes that maybe we had some semblance of a quarterback in Felipe Franks, and that Coach Mack could finally make the team turn the corner. But just like I said about Tennessee, I think Florida, even this year with Dan Mullen coming in, they need to be a wait-and-see project. They need to prove themselves to be in the top 25 before they get in there. They definitely don't deserve a preseason ranking next year, and they didn't deserve one this past season. Moving on, as I would love to move on from my terrible Florida Gators, to Louisville, the Birds with Teeth. Came in number 16, and I'm surprised they were ranked that low going into the season. We did our own top fives, and I put them in my top 5 for preseason Scout Team Sports preseason top 5 poll. I had high hopes for them, but they just completely fell apart once they got blown out by Clemson. They had losses against Boston College, losses against Wake Forest, and then they lost to finish up the season to Mississippi State. Very disappointing season when you bring back the reigning Heisman Trophy winner.
Yeah, it was. They also lost to an NC State team that was better than expected this year. Lamar Jackson, though, actually had a better year than he had last year. It's another Heisman-worthy season, but you're not going to win the Heisman if you go 8-5 and 4-4 in the ACC. We'll see what they do moving forward. Jackson's going to the NFL. They open their season with Bama next year, so that's not going to be an easy game right out of the gate for a brand new quarterback. So ranking them 16, as far as hit or miss for me, this is like a way too flirtatious divorcee in her mid-40s. This is a miss that everybody knows is a miss.
Yeah, there's not much to say about it. I don't think Louisville's future is bright under Petrino. He's one of those guys that he's a good coach as long as he has good players. And the fact that he couldn't win more games with, like you said, with a better Lamar Jackson, a guy putting up better stats than he did in his Heisman Trophy winning season. I mean, you look at their losses, and there's just no defense to speak of. In all of their losses, they allowed over 30 points, and a good majority of them, they allowed over 40 points in their losses. And you just can't win games that way, whether it's in college or the NFL. you can't win games living and dying in shootouts.
Yeah, and their bowl game was a perfect example of that. Lamar Jackson played pretty well. He did have a couple turnovers, but he did everything. He was their entire team, and I'll be interested to see how he plays at the NFL level, where he doesn't have to carry the entire team all the time.
Yep. So I'm looking forward to the next series next week. Here's how the AP finished from 16 to 20. And number 16 was Washington. Number 17 was your Big Ten, Northwestern, climbed all the way up to number 17. Number 18 was LSU with a 9-4 record. Mississippi State finished off the season strong with number 19 in their 9-4 record. And then Stanford, wow, surprised they're there at number 20 with a 9-5 record. Don't know how they didn't fall out of the top 25, especially since we were talking about another 8-5 team that fell out in Kansas State. So that's how the top 20 finished. Gigantic miss. USF is the only team that they had close to even being right in that realm. I guess you could say maybe Miami is close because they finished at 13. They only moved up 5 spots. I give this ranking.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I give this ranking a C-, maybe a D+ when you got Louisville and Florida in that mix, bringing it down.
Yeah, they were all over the map. They got a couple right on the head, and then just some horrible misses in there. So, yeah, I'd agree with your grades.
All right, man. I think instead of giving away game balls, we should finish the show off with this. We talked a little bit about it pre-show. We meant to do it in the intro, but we kind of got lost in the mix of introducing our guest and everything. We want to talk a little bit about Washington State quarterback, unfortunately committing suicide. I know you wanted to talk a little bit about that. So it was Tyler Helinski. It's just this. I hate seeing anybody commit suicide. It hits close to home because I know I've had personal ties to suicide and depression and things like that. And when you look at, I don't know, I hate hearing people talk about suicide because you hear a lot of people say, well, there was no signs of depression and there was no, he did all these things that made you think that everything was doing okay. And honestly, that's usually how suicide goes, Sean. I don't know how much personal ties you have to anybody who's committed suicide or anything like that, but those who actually go through with it tend to do a really good job at hiding it. And that's why we wanted to give out the national hotline. I think you had that number up, correct?
Right. It's the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. It's 1-800-273-8255. They have a lot of great volunteers there who are trained to talk to people, counsel people. Like you said, you never know what people are going through. This guy, he is a 21-year-old kid. So wanted to give that number out, give people somebody to talk to. There's, like I said, those great volunteers, family, friends, anybody you want to talk to. If you just want to shoot the bull with us on Twitter, talk to people. So
yeah, when I saw this story, when I saw this story, I tweeted out the national hotline number, and I basically said, if this is you, if you're going through this, it is a mental hell. It is a mental prison that some people, if you've never gone through it, people can't really understand what it's like to have to be alone with your thoughts and be imprisoned by them. And my advice to those who are going through that, and if you're listening to this now and you're going through that, call that phone number. Like you said, shoot the bull with us on Twitter. Call a friend, call a stranger, go to a hospital. Buy yourself some time, basically, is what I'm saying. Don't make that final decision yet. Make other decisions that help prevent you from making that decision. Go see a movie, go do something. But more importantly, you got to get help. You got to get professional help. And you can get that through that national hotline. It's not just there to talk you out of committing suicide. It's there to help find counselors in your area, help get you in contact with doctors and things like that. So my MVP, or not my MVP, but my game ball definitely goes to that hotline, the people who set that up, the people who donate money to it and fund it, and those who volunteer. Those are definitely my game balls. I'm sure you can. I'm sure you agree with me on that one.
Oh yeah, definitely for sure.
So definitely a hard thing to talk about, but it definitely needs to be brought up. And when we see, like you said, a young guy, 21, had a lot of things going for him, but we might not ever know what was going on that he felt the need to do that. We feel for his family, we feel for his friends, and our thoughts and prayers go out to those at Washington State and his family and friends. And hopefully, it just serves as another reminder to us that you know it's not over until it's over. So give yourself a shot, and like you said, help out those around you and stuff like that. Is one of those topics. It's hard to know when to stop talking about it or what to end on. So, you got any final thoughts on that?
That's all I got. Just remember, these guys are just kids. So if you're out there sending mean tweets to college players, kind of reevaluate, think about it a little bit. These are kids, they're human beings, not just athletes for your entertainment.
Right. Yeah. Oh man, I could go on and on about people who send mean tweets
Yeah.
to anybody. But all right, man. Well, I hate to end the show on that, but I think it's appropriate to end the show with that. Go ahead and give that number out one more time, and then we'll sign off.
Yes, it's the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, 1-800-273-8255. I think they do texting too, so you can kind of keep in contact with them that way if you're more inclined to do that instead of phone calls. But yeah, definitely a number, valuable resource to people who need it.
Yeah, definitely, man. All right, well, let's end the show. Go Gators.
Go Illini.
All right, till next time. See ya.
Later.